Greetings, guys. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Monette, and this is my channel, Evolve with Monette. So good to have you here sharing some energy with me on this fine morning. You guys know the early bird catches the worm, and so I'm up trying to catch these worms, and I want to disseminate some of the energy of these magical worms to you as well. One of the things that I wanted to do was a continuation of a series I began about 4 months ago. But my goodness, how much has happened in the last 4 months. There's also something that I want you to stay tuned for. And Livy, if you are watching, I did not forget about you and the Ruby Crown and the Tall Poppy Syndrome. There was a fantastic video, and it's not fantastic because I'm doing it. It's fantastic because it was written by one of the subscribers here, and I promised that I would share it because it's so arrested and touched my soul. But there's been so much going on with me that I hadn't been able to get it done, and I promised that I would do it justice. So I promise you, Livy, if you happen to hear this, you are not forgotten whatsoever. In any case, I wanted to do a continuation today of the 108 wisdom principles, which any super empath needs to understand. Any spiritual practitioner, any person that is seeking in any capacity needs to know that these are things that we will strive to be or that we need to integrate into our personality, into our life, and into our understanding. The last one that we left off with, again, 4 months ago, and if you're looking for the video, I am sitting against a backdrop of a velvet blue headboard with white pillows. So if you're looking for that, and I think I have on a rainbow dress, but the last one I left off on was the law of cycles. And the law of cycles states that everything in creation rises and falls, manifests and demanifests, expresses and withdraws. And so we will continue. There are 108 of them, and I think it's more intuitive. I'm being guided not to necessarily number them because the numbers don't matter. You will hear this as you were supposed to hear it. And as I am reading this on my iPad, I'm on 22%, and this year is 2022. So there's going to be a lot of things that we talk about, even though I haven't even glanced over them. They just said get into it. Right now, I mean, I've glanced over them previously, but right now they just said this is what we want you to work on. I thought I was going to do a reading. They said no, this. So they being my angels for those of you that are new here. And the year 2022 is very symbolic because it's about ease of partnership and the way that we're going to work together well and the way things and always work together. I know we always talk about love, that is my jam, but I'm talking about business partnerships, relationships with your kiddos, relationships with your parents, relationships with people, even enemies, just the way that things work differently this year. It's going to not be filled with so much strife and pressing. But let's carry on. The law of degree. With sufficient soul advancement, the universe is obedient to your commands. This is about manifestation, and this is something that we often question when we are dealing with areas of manifestation is how come my manifestations are not coming to me as quickly as I would like. I remember dating someone years ago who was a pastor of a Unitarian or church, I believe, and she said to me, I'm really good at manifesting. You're not so good at it yet, but you will get there. And she wasn't wrong. She wasn't wrong. She was really brilliant at manifesting. But I didn't understand that one of the things that was pushing off my manifestation abilities was that I wasn't in alignment with obedience and the universe. And I hadn't really done the soul advancement that I needed to. I was still in my infancy. This was maybe over 15 years ago. I was still in my infancy regarding this. And so that's one of the things that you will need to understand. The more work you do on yourself, the easier it is to get the universe to line up with your commands. So, what are your commands for 2022? 2022, brand new you, all of the fun things that we like to say. And it's so funny that it is said that if it doesn't rhyme, then it doesn't work, your New Year's mantra. But here's the deal, you have to put in the work in order for it to work and for the universe to yield to those commands. And that's what, as a super empath, you need to know. This is for people that are really practicing. These are for my Reiki practitioners, my other readers of any kinds. This is what you need to know. Anybody that's doing any guidance or counseling, you have to be doing your own soul work. I couldn't come on here and talk to you if I hadn't been doing my work. And in order for me to be here talking to you, it required work that was not always easy, sometimes painful. And that's something else to know. Soul advancement, it's a funny way that that's phrased, but it's a trick because it means that you will have some dark days, some dark nights of the soul. And not every day in soul advancement will be that, but there will definitely be some of that in order for you to really grow. You will be challenged for growth, and you'll have to reject things that you may want, or you may have to walk into a different direction from other people. You may have to leave friends behind, all kinds of things that are not delicious and fun. But in order for you to manifest a life that's ideal for you, you will have to relinquish that. And that's what soul advancement is. And then the universe moves effortlessly with you. And you will notice that. One of the next laws of the 108 laws of wisdom is the law of delegation. Source delegates to the maximum feasible extent. So a lot of us have type A personalities, and especially depending on how your chart is set up. Any Virgos watching, ahem, ahem, I'm talking to you, but it's in my chart heavily too. That's why I'm talking to you. Pot kettle, right? No problem saying that. Well, with the law of delegation, the universe and source delegates to the maximum feasible extent. It means that the universe is always looking for ways to make something easier, and easier doesn't mean shirking responsibility. It does mean that if it is healthy to delegate it to someone that might be better at what you're doing than what you're doing, there may be a better investment for your time. So when source delegates to the maximum feasible extent, it is a model for you and how you should carry your life and what you should do as a super empath, as a light worker, as an earth angel. You cannot be the martyr. You can't take it all on. You can't do every single exercise. It can't just be all you. You are not a party of one. We are here to delegate in other ways. Do it with diplomacy. Do it with kindness. Do it with diligence. Do it purposely. Do not haphazardly think that you need to be Captain Save anybody. The person that you save when you delegate is yourself, okay? So that's one of the lessons of this law. And I thought that that was really powerful because I so relate to wanting to do it all and to not thinking that I'm allowed to have outside help. But in fact, in the wisest ways, people that succeed do have outside help. The person that's coming to mind for me is Richard Branson, who was functionally illiterate at to some capacity, terrible at math, but he had an idea and he was a visionary and he was supposed to have the life that he has. And he just recently went to space, I do believe, and is making space travel feasible for other people, but it's because he delegated to those that were smarter than him and he talks about it. I'm not just saying that as an observation. It is a point, a talking point that he makes when he's teaching people how to succeed. He was like, these are things that I did not understand. These were things for people that were degreed. What I was the visionary. What I was the person who knew that it could get done. The same thing, I'm thinking of Elon Musk, who is actually rather brilliant and a genius in his own right and actually tested and proven. However, he delegates because he can't do everything. He can create a world that is different and is moving forward with a reduced carbon footprints, but it's because he has a team. Sometimes, sweet super empath, you will need to delegate to a team, and you should be okay with that because it is guided by the universe for us to do that. The law of desire. You become like what you desire. This one is a powerful one. And this is one that I have noticed, especially with working with my clients and working with myself. You are your first teacher, empath, right? You are your first study. You are your first petri dish, if you will. I have watched this work in good and bad ways, and this is why they say like attracts like, or birds of a feather flock together. You become like what you desire. This is so important to understand. So if you are lusting after, let's get real low vibrational real quick here. If you are lusting after someone who doesn't have their ish together, you will become like them. Meaning if it's a strong lust, not just a glancing, fleeting, I have a crush, a quick little thing, but if it's like a strong, you're after this person, you're stalking this person. I've seen this work out really negatively for people. And I've also seen it work out really negatively for me. So you will become like what you will desire because you will become a vibrational match for their energy. Now, any of us here understand this. This is not for the faint of heart, but this is my favorite part when I get to talk to you guys about this because you get it, because you've been doing your work. This to you, I feel like some of these principles is like reading music. Not everybody can do it, but when you can, it is like speaking another language. You guys understand exactly what I'm saying here. You become like what you desire most. Okay? So raise your vibration and be careful of who you allow to be close. That has been such a huge lesson for me in the last few years with many relationships. There's been one that was prominent that I talked about a lot on here and got to transmute the energy and purge it. But what I realized is that I had become and was allowing myself to become very low vibrational too. And when someone was adjacent to someone that I knew, I was like, I can't go down to where they are. I had to disembark. I didn't care how I felt about the other person. I was like, that's too far for me, too far from myself. Be very careful and do not be afraid to cut off people if you are dismayed by the lack of caliber or energy that surrounds them. Because if you like that person, you will naturally gravitate to creating traits and mimicking things that are like them. I vibrate higher now, but it's because I desired connections and friendships with people that vibrated higher, and they did too. And so we became similar in that way, and it was better. It's better for you, empath, to check your desires. And that's not just about your sexuality, that's not just about your friendship or your bestie. What about your job? What about an ideal? Or what content are you consuming? This is very real. We are programmed easily. Okay. I have a video that's coming up here called the Vanilla Sky Effect, where I will teach you about how you can get exactly what you want to get in your life just by visual snapshots that you take. If any of you guys have seen the Vanilla Sky movie, you'll understand the concept to some degree. I'm going to expand on it in a healthier way than was portrayed in the movie, but they weren't wrong. What I will say here is this: be careful who you tag along with or who you bring along with you on your journey, because that energy will start to equalize and you will vibrate, and you have to see, are you vibrating with someone like Pennywise, for those of you that have seen it, or are you vibrating with higher source energy? Be very careful. You will become like what you desire. Okay. All right. Same principle of, what we think about, we bring about, and all the rest. So let's move on. The law of detachment. When you release attachment to outcomes, you open the full field of possibility. I love this. I've learned this too, and I think that's why they allowed my destiny to shift. And I want the same for you. We so often get very attached to how something can be. And I learned such a powerful lesson in the last few years about releasing the outcome of my destiny. I had decided that I was going to have a certain life. I decided that I was going to have a certain spiritual wife, if you will. I was going to have someone who supported me. I just kind of knew what I wanted, and they were going to have metaphysical abilities and this, that, and the other. And this was what was told to me. We all have our different visions and things that we hear. Michael Jordan was told in his ear that he was going to be one of the greatest basketball players, no matter what his coaches said. And I could go on to all of various stories of success stories of people, of the things they had in their head versus what the reality was like in front of them. But when we get attached to the way that it has to be, we tamp down the creativity of the universe. And when I was attached to the outcome of the person that I thought it needed to be, I was just not getting anywhere. In fact, I was regressing and I was losing momentum and I was stressing and I was in poverty consciousness thinking, and it was affecting every facet of my life. And it was because the person wasn't right. It had nothing to do with the ideal or the dream. I got exactly what I wanted, exactly what I had seen. it just wasn't that person. And when I released the outcome that it had to be that person, and my God, how many of us break our backs, necks, and hurt ourselves trying to make someone be the person? Okay. That's one place where I see this a lot, specifically for the work that I do, where I'm counseling you guys out there and all over the world about relationships. And we get very attached that it has to be the person. And trust me, there was no one more attached than me and no one more codependent than me. So I'm not talking to you from the mount, y'all. I was literally right there, a hot mess, okay? But this is what I realized is that the stress depleted. Everything got easier when I was like, oh, it's never supposed to be her. And maybe it's not supposed to be even whoever. But the point is that when I looked away from that endeavor and I divested from that endeavor, the universe gave me exactly what I wanted, but better. And it's the truth. I'm not just saying that. I actually got someone who was interested in their spirituality, who had natural gifts of mediumship that were powerful, far more powerful than me. And they were able to teach me in their own way and teach me new nuances that I didn't have. So I had a facet of it, but they had a different one. And I was actually around someone who it worked. It just was easy. It was easy. It was easy. All of the things that I had envisioned that I was so attached to the other person with, I got with someone else because I decided, oh, maybe it could possibly be someone else. So that's what they're saying. Let's say you're manifesting a house. Let's say you're manifesting a car. Let's say you're doing all of the material 3D manifestations that we all need in order to exist on this life. Sometimes we have an idea that it has to, it has to have three blinds and it has to be blue and white and whatever. And they said, if you can release that, we can give you better. And that's what I've really been practicing lately, is detaching from the idea that something has to be a certain way. I wanted love in a certain way, regarding my husband, and I wanted it to look a certain way, and I wanted to feel a certain way. And I didn't necessarily get all of the things that I had written on that list that Oprah taught us all to write in the 90s, but I got exactly everything that my heart really desired and actually needed. I got a situation, I got a partnership, I got a life partnership that fulfilled many, many, many of my primal base needs of comfort and feeling loved and security. I got what I needed, but I had to release the outcome because it wasn't exactly how I envisioned it. And God, if you would have told me it, I wouldn't have believed you. Some of us need to release the idea that a thing has to be a certain way, because that's when the universe really gets to play in that space where we remove our will, because we have free will. So you can insist on it being a certain way. But what I learned in my journey, shout out to Ralph Smart, was that I was breaking my own heart trying to hold on to the outcome. And as soon as I released it, it was just so much better. The next law is the law of discipline. Discipline brings greater freedom. Ooh. This is one that I am still working with, right? But it's one that I can't say that I have not seen the benefit of. Especially shout out again to my Virgo loves, right? So discipline brings greater freedom. When I have a routine, when I have a whiteboard, when I have a schedule up, when I have an idea of how much energy I'm going to give away in a week. And when I say give away, yes, I am compensated and there is reciprocity. And if people get a reading with me, they pay me and all that stuff. But I still have to map out what I have, because with any practitioner worth their salt, pro bono work will be requested, right? My super empaths, you know what I mean? You'll be guided to go over and talk to someone in the store. Someone will come over and talk to you. That is some of the pro bono work you will do. You will help a sibling or a family member out. You will feel led to do something nice for somebody that's a coworker or whatever the case may be. This is some of the pro bono work that we do for free. Carolyn Miss teaches about this very well, about the energy levels that we have before we even leave our house in the morning. And now in the pandemic, leaving our house is not so much of a thing for many of us, but before we even step out of the shower, that we have already invested hours or minutes or moments into feeding someone else's energy, even if they're not present with us. So with the law of discipline, you have to decide how much you have to give. And also, this is about the quality of life you want to live. So in the last year, I have had all kinds of medical stuff happen. And one of the powerful lessons I had was when I was in a rehab facility. And I filmed a couple of videos from that rehab facility. If you're looking to see them, they're the ones where there was kind of a painting of bamboo off to the side, because it was one of my therapies while I was there. Well, it's kind of funny. Me and my bestie would joke because the physical therapist would come to get me like clockwork, right? And I was going through an excruciating recovery that affected my mobility. So I had to go to physical therapy so that I would not atrophy and lose my ability to have the most beautiful gift, which is movement. Man, I will never take it for granted again. And so, whether I felt good or not, whether the pain meds had kicked in or not, they were there. Like, the joke was, we'd like to talk to you about your car's extended warranty, which is like a huge joke for us now, right? In the zeitgeist in the last couple of years. So that was it. They were there, whether I wanted them to be there, whether I was fully dressed, whether I felt my best or not. But one of the best things that came out of my stint in rehab was that I got healthy, and it wasn't that I lost all of the weight in my life, but it put me on a track to continue doing what was already happening for me in that year, which was a great deal of weight loss. And the thing about it was I enjoyed moving my body. It was routine and it was built into my day. I was in physical therapy for 3 hours a day. I was moving my body that was in the most pain I've ever been in my life for 3 hours a day. No, I wasn't like running up mountains, but I was climbing stairs and I was on treadmills and I was doing parallel bars and all kinds of, I mean, not like you're thinking in gymnast world, guys. Very moderated, okay? Please let me be fair and honest. However, and my bestie even came to physical therapy and got to observe me, and my husband was there and various things because they like to have people there, especially as you're getting closer to discharge and all that stuff. And so they all saw me doing what they thought was like, whoa, that's too much. We know what your injury is, we know what you're dealing with. This is too much. And the thing about it is the discipline of it made me better. It created endorphins and it released oxycodone. Yeah, I was getting meds, but it released oxytocin, excuse me, and it created in me this sense of stability. And when I got home, I was able to continue my health walks and whatever to a certain degree. When I got off schedule, when the pain became insane and I couldn't do it, I realized that I was not functioning in the same vein. Also, this is about work related situations too. So that's one area for all of us struggling with health and weight and self care. We're still in Venus retrograde until the 29th of January for whenever anybody sees this. This was filmed in January 2022 at the top of the year. But this is the time of resolutions, right? The reason that discipline brings greater freedom is because when you are actively being disciplined, you will have the ability to do what you want to do. For me, specific to that story, it was about my body movement. And I had greater freedom with a smaller frame. I had greater freedom even through the pain because I was healing at a faster rate. My skin was regenerating, all of the things after multiple surgeries. Now, regarding work, here's where I noticed that this played out beautifully for me. And this is a few years ago, maybe 8 years ago, I started to really build my empire and my destiny. Empire is a beautiful world. I grew up in the 80s watching Dallas and Dynasty, so an empire seemed very relevant and possible for me. But however, here's what I will say. The reason that became successful and because the reason that I became one of the best in my field, and that was statistically proven and validated by some of the companies that I freelanced for and by my clients, it was because I showed up every day. One of my favorite books, Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art, a play on Sun Tzu's The Art of War, is about how you go from being an amateur to a professional if you're a creative in any capacity. And I am a creative in various capacities, a life path 3, which is literally about being a creative person and expressing myself. But in order for me to turn what was just an expression and a little parlor trick hobby into a profession, I had to show up relentlessly. I had to build a schedule. I had to do it. And I decided that I wanted a life where no one was controlling me. So I made my own schedule. I decided I wanted a life where I was free, where I could travel anywhere and I didn't have to ask anybody for permission. I could just pick up and go. I decided that I wanted to be all over the world and I didn't need anybody to have to give me permission and say yes or no. And that came from discipline. So I have manifested and created a life that is exactly what I envisioned. And it's only getting better and getting more fine tuned every day. But it's because I showed up in a uncomfortable way at first. It wasn't easy. No one was cracking the whip. No one was micromanaging me. I had to get up and create my own destiny, create my own whiteboard, create my own schedule, make my own schedule, show up and keep my word. If someone wants a reading, then how do I figure out how to fit that in? Do I have the energy? Am I assessing that? Super empath. If you're working in the metaphysical arts, you're going to have to figure out a way to be your own boss, and you have to hold yourself accountable. But discipline helped me so that I wasn't experiencing losses, but only gains regarding my finances, but also building my clientele. Showing up paid off for me so well. Showing up for my body during that physical therapy moment paid off for me well. Showing up in my marriage, meaning how are we showing up for each other? Showing up repeatedly, even when it was uncomfortable, made this moment last year when we had tragedy thrown at us and surprises and medical misalignments and near death experiences. We knew how to vibrate off each other and how to catch each other, even if there were moments that we both missed, because we were disciplined in it. And that is not easy to do. And I'm not just bragging, y'all. It wasn't easy, but it was because I could rely on what do they call it? Muscle memory, essentially. So emotional muscle memory regarding the marriage, physical muscle memory regarding the physical exercise, and mental muscle memory regarding my job. I worked every day from ICU. I worked with clients. I talked to some of you from the hospitals. I was in for months, off and on, throughout the summer and into the fall. And that's because I had trained myself to be that person no matter what. When the nurses and doctors like, we'll give you a note, you're crazy. Oh my gosh, we admire your commitment. How are you doing it? It wasn't that I was just being admirable. It's that I had a job to do. And that there are those of you out there that needed me, and I needed me too. And I needed that routine to stay sane. That is why being disciplined allows you freedom. Now I do travel the world and I can work from anywhere I am, and I do. There isn't a place that I go that I'm not doing a reading or getting a new client or working with the companies that I freelance for, because I created a vein to do that in, but it took a lot of work in the beginning. And now it is something that is self-generating, but it's still self-generated by me. Discipline yourself to really be free. Stayed a long time on that. Somebody may have needed to hear that. The next law is the law of divine flow. When your spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical bodies are in alignment, you will experience divine flow. This is what I'm still striving for. My physical body is coming into alignment. I will say this. What I have noticed is that the more I divested from superfluous low vibrational energies, it doesn't mean that everybody was a bad person that I had to push away from the table, but I just had no more tolerance for imbeciles is what it was. And I know that sounds really harsh. Trust me, as you sojourn super empath and my spiritual practitioners here listening, you will realize that you just do not have the tolerance for people that are not evolving. It is what it is. And people can say you're a snob, and they can say you're mean and you're changing and what's happening to you. It just means you're not tolerant to be a doormat anymore, to deal with narcissists anymore, and that if people are lying to your face, you just don't deal with it anymore. And so what happens is all these things start to line up: your mind, your body, and your soul. So the more that I pushed away from trolls and narcissists and coverts and haters and personality disorder people that weren't interested in getting well, because I want to make that distinction. We all have mental health issues, okay? I'm sure there's a percentage that I could spit out that I can't think of off the top of my head, especially for America. What I will say is that, and I deal with my own depression, my own anxiety. We all have our things. However, are you working on them? Are you taking any responsibility to actively address it? Are you in therapy? I am. I do proactive work in order to get myself up out of the dirt, but it also means that it works metaphysically for me beautifully. When I started pushing away a lot of toxic energies that didn't mean well for me, that couldn't tell me the truth if I had literally put the truth in their mouth, I realized my health was just going south. And I feel like this past year, 2021, was a physical purging of the work that I had done metaphysically and emotionally in the 5D, meaning I had released a lot of cords. I had cut a lot of cords. I had salt bathed a lot of people. I had salted people out of my life. I have videos up here about that, salt divorces. I had done a lot of things. And then my body got right. It got wrong, but it got right. It was very interesting. And now I will have probably what is the most in aligned body that I've ever had in my life, because a lot of the things that were so toxic were actually literally cut out. It's funny. That's another message and another video for another day. I was holding on to things that were dead, quite literally, actually in my body. And it also showed up in my head. It also showed up in my bed at times. And I'm not talking about my husband, I'm talking about other people that I had been engaged with. And I was holding on to these people that were of the past, and they were never meant to last. And they were quick little fleeting things that I turned into a whole nother thing. Sometimes we'll do that, super empath. We won't want to walk away out of our warped, twisted mentality regarding loyalty. But what I will say here is that as I got into alignment, now my body did too. I am in a whole different weight bracket. I've talked about that, and I even made a joke about it many videos ago, that I told the narcissist, like, I know that I'm going to lose weight. It was so funny because that was not anything that was my actual physical reality, but my higher self knew. And to this day, I've almost lost the pounds that they weighed at their heaviest. It's fascinating to me how God works. What I will tell you is, it's because I got into alignment, mind, spirit, and body. And that is one of the principles here too. The divine flow, when your spiritual, mental, and emotional and physical bodies in alignment, you will experience divine flow. That divine flow trickled over into my finances. It trickled over into my business. And even at the beginning of this year, a fantastic boon, the end of last year, beginning of this year, where all I did was show up at a place, and then literally blessings rain down and new clients and everything else. And it's because I was exactly in my divine flow. Even in my recovery, even still in pain every day, God was sending magic my way, because he said, you're listening. He says, now you're aligning up. And the thing that was once so hard in my life, specifically my weight, literally began to fall off in a way that I could not have ever seen or predicted it. And still, I will have to be accountable to maintain it and hold it and deal with it. That's a thing. It is a thing for me. But what I saw was, it was much more effortlessly that happened once I stopped fighting everything else around me, and stopped fighting for things around me that I was never supposed to fight for, and just said, I don't care anymore. I care about me. Get into your divine flow, and then watch the rest of your life come in to alignment. The next law is the law of divine oneness. With sufficient development, source dwells in us, and we dwell in every other aspect. This was something that I really got a glimpse of during my near-death experience last year, at the end of last year, in the fall. I realized that even the narcissists, and I made a video about it, and even the people that had abused me, and the people that had tried me and purposely been malicious and gone out of their way, people that were racist, all of the things, I realized that we are all each other, that we are all loved, and that when you cross over, there is a divine love that is there for everyone, and there is a life review, and these things are true. I became obsessed about near death experiences because I wanted to validate what I had seen and had happened. And when I saw the beauty and the richness of others, I realized that I was missing nothing, and that this is the same message that we all get if you have the misfortune of having that kind of moment regarding your health and you cross over. And what I realized is that from the flower, this is one of the things that people talk about when they get into these near death experiences and they cross over, that the flowers were vibrating and singing, and the butterflies and the animals, that everything has a consciousness, a very vegan approach, right? So the vegans and vegetarians here on earth are very much onto something. However, what that means is, whether you choose to have bacon or not, you are all the same thing. And that means that you mirror each other, and that you are like each other. Even the lowest and worst of you, even the ones that have harmed and injured you the most, have a piece and part of the God that's in you, in them as well. And that's when I was able to really release and forgive the people that never meant me well, because I realized that they're here having their human experiences, and they have their free will, and they made their choices. But it was not for me to dwell in resentment of them forever. It doesn't mean I won't teach about them and make jokes and have a moment, because that's what it is. The best part of any of those experiences for any of us empaths is to teach it. They are much more valuable to us out of our life and as a teaching point than they ever were in our life. But what I will say is that when you realize this law, that we are all one, you have a little bit more compassion. And it doesn't mean let them back in to let them trample you again or gaslight you again. Nay, nay, empaths, I'm all about protect yourself. Literally, that is why I incarnated, to teach other empaths how to shield and protect themselves. Message, stay tuned. There's something coming up about that. But what I will tell you is get back to yourself and understand that, yes, part of their souls may have been black. But the angels taught me in that moment of leaving that all of our souls have been that way too. And all of our souls are magically lit up and full of color, a kaleidoscope, and we are loved. There is oneness. We are all one. That's when they say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And to the least of them, would you do something? That's why we see this a lot in our Cinderella stories and our Beauty and the Beast stories. I've made some videos here about the high priestess by the door. The reason that that's such a poignant story that we see in every kind of major spiritual book, from the Quran to the Bible, you name it, is because, to the Tao, is because we are all tested that way, because universal God, source, test everyone to say, when someone doesn't look like you and someone seems to be quote unquote lesser than you, how do you treat them? Because that's how you will be treated. And that's why Beauty and the Beast is such a quick flip, that she literally goes in and like destroys everything, not because she's just angry, but because she was an angel essentially, and she was giving him an opportunity to rise to his higher self, and he missed it because he couldn't see humanity in her. He saw himself better than her, and that and she let him know, you got it twisted. We are all one. And now I will create something in you where you have to counterbalance your humanity by putting you to what I saw you treat me as, which is beastly. It's powerful. So be careful how you treat that person that's homeless. Be careful how you treat someone who you think is lesser than you, because you never know how God might use them to test you, because we are all one. The next law is the law of dynamic balance. Every aspect of a working system must be in a dynamic balance with the source. In order for things to work, it has to be in alignment with what is right. And for me, God is how I see things, and that is what is right. And it must be in a dynamic balance in order for it to work. So all of the parts have to be in alignment, and there can't be anything that is out of place. It doesn't mean that the imperfection isn't allowed, but what it means is, for it to work well, it has to be in alignment with God. So that's when you ask yourself, is this of God or not of God? Or is this of the universe or not of the universe? Is this a divine purpose for this thing? Sometimes, super empath, you don't get answers that just fall out of heaven. You have to use your intuition, and you will be able to see by the evidence in front of you if a thing is working or not working for you, if it's in dynamic balance with the source. The law of energy. Below the line of creation, everything reduces to energy. So, this is about our marriages. This is about our health. This is about our careers. This is about our kids. This is about our education. What energy are you putting in? You know, we bring about what we think about. These are things that are said, and the thing that you put, and like attracts like, and what you put your energy into will manifest. So think about where the greatest percentage of your day goes. Does it go into study about esoteric and spiritual things? Does it go into TikTok? Does it go into building your dreams? Does it go into your kids and your relationship? Where you're investing your energy is where it is going to actually show up and manifest in your life, and everything reduces down to energy. So our currency is energy. For those of you that have ever gotten readings and you see that someone's like, someone was stealing your money, and you hear that a lot, it's because the reader is seeing it very 3D, and they're seeing the pentacles. I always see that as energy. Someone was taking your energy, right? So everything reduces down to energy, because that's all we really have. Even money is a physical, tangible manifestation of an exchange of currency. Currency is energy, currents, the actual electric vibration. And now it's really down to electric vibrations and transfers, right? So our energy is what guides our life, and it's the best thing that we have, empath, especially us, because we give energy to other people. We can lift them up, and we can sometimes allow people to pull us down. Everything reduces down to energy. And that goes back to that thing I was saying regarding Carolyn Mrs. teachings, regarding how much energy you have before you even get out of the shower, that you may have put 10% into a fight you had with your mom, or a situation that you had with a coworker the day before, that you are literally using your battery bank up before you step out of the door, figuratively or actually. So pay attention to that because it all reduces down to energy. If a marriage is imbalanced, then understand that it's because one half of the partnership is not putting the energy in the way that it needs to be. The reason that resentments build up in marriages regarding finances is because it's energy. It is a tangible realization and observation of how much energy a partner has put in. And unless you have communication and concerted efforts to keep that balance out, resentment will come about because someone will think I'm not getting as much as I should. This is why contracts and partnerships sometimes don't go good because the energy is not honored. This is why if you are dealing with a situation as an empath, we often get in where we're giving and giving and giving to a friend emotionally, and then one day the bubble bursts, right? It just pops because we no longer have another drop, not one more to give. And that means that compassion is gone. That means that negotiation is gone. That means that we're not trying to hear somebody out because we are depleted, because it all reduces down to energy. Pay attention to that. The next law is the law of essence. A thing is what it is, regardless of what anyone thinks about it. So, I'm hearing a rose is still a rose, baby girl, you're still a flower. A rose is a flower, is a rose, is a flower, is a rose. And it doesn't matter if you think it's not what it is what it is. It reminds me of Eminem. I am whatever I say I am, and if I wasn't, then why would I say I am? And then he goes on to declare some of the things that he was. He says, in the newspaper, every day I am, because that's just the way I am. He spoke over his life a thing, and he said, this is I am. That I am is a powerful declaration. So a thing is what it is. I am is a word, blessing, or a curse, depending on how you utilize it. A thing is what it is. This is about our perception. This is about our realities. And this is about the things that people voice onto us that they may or may not want us to be. But a thing is what it is, regardless of what anyone thinks about it. So if you're in a relationship dynamic and you're saying it's not working and the other person is telling you, but it is, what's the truth? Both of your truths are correct, and it will manifest that way. How could that be, Monette? Well, it will. For one person, the relationship may dissolve and not work, and for the other person, they may be holding on to something that we do, empaths, far too long, a situation, because it is what it is, regardless of what you think about it. Be very clear that you cannot warp the fabric of time and reality. Some things are exactly what they are meant to be, and it is right in front of your face. Think about that one. That one's a bit of a puzzle there, right? It is what it is, no matter what you think about it. The law of essence, its essence holds its shape. Its essence is its reality, okay? So what is the essence of maybe some of your friendship dynamics? What is the essence of your job career trajectory? What is the essence of your college career and what you're attaining to be? What is the essence of your health journey? If it is a thing, then maybe there's time to assess that because no one can tell you any differently. Make sense? The next law, the law of expanded consciousness. As your consciousness expands, you move into a less restrictive relationship to time and space. Deepak Chopra has written books about quantum leaps. So it's one of the books that I read when I was in college many years ago. And it's about how you can accelerate your growth. And it caught my eye because I really like that show, Quantum Leap, with Sam Beckett. And I really love that show. I think one of the actors in that show passed away recently. And what they're showing me here with this is that as your consciousness expands, you move into a less restrictive relationship to time and space. Things happen for me in a way, manifestations came to me in a way as my consciousness expanded, and I did notice that. I was not rigid anymore to the fact that it had to happen in a certain way. I was like, okay, angels, universe, God, whoever I talk to, this is what I want. I don't understand how you're going to make it happen, but I want it. The desire is there. I'm shooting out bolts of desire, and I expect it to show up. I don't know how. And I started to release the idea that it had to happen in a certain time frame. I always had this idea that I needed to be quote unquote married by a certain time or not married at all. There were times in my life where that wasn't part of my reality. But then I thought, it's over for me because I'm too old and it's this and that. And I wanted a certain experience. I wanted to be with somebody who didn't have kids. That was just for me. That was my own personal thing. I wanted to marry someone that hadn't had their own children. I had other things that were on my quote unquote lists that Oprah taught us how to write. And I just thought, it's just not going to happen in my life. I wanted us to start out in a certain kind of like condo or apartment. I wanted funny stories to tell about fire alarms and toasters that would make them go off. And my God, did I get everything I asked for? It just didn't happen in the time that I thought. I wanted to expand to a bigger house. I wanted all of these things. And it just didn't happen in the way that I thought it would happen, but I got every single thing I wanted. Once my consciousness expanded and I started delving into my spiritual work, I got every single thing that I asked for, even things that I didn't even remember that I had asked for showed up. And I got the exact kind of life partner that I needed to accelerate my growth, and my partner got the life partner that he needed to accelerate his growth. And we both have expanded our growth, and it's been a beautiful thing to see. But it's because I shifted my consciousness and my reality, and I realized that it wasn't going to happen for me in the way that I thought it was, and not by the time that I thought. I was very rigid. We can be that way, and it just didn't happen for me that way. But then everything I wanted happened exactly the way I needed it to. Even about travel and where his family was from and everything. These were all things that I had thought about and wanted and fantasized about before I ever knew he existed. Okay, specifically, I had visions of going up north to see family and see in-laws before I ever thought I'd really have an in-law. Okay, very fascinating how God will work things out. The next one is the law of expanded context. In a large enough context, everything makes sense. This one is like so meta and micro that it makes sense. When I think about some of the things that have happened in my life, and I want you to take a minute to think about some of the things that have happened in your life, don't they now just make sense? Like some things just had to happen the way that they did. Some things were orchestrated even when you couldn't put it together, and you can see it so clearly, like, oh, that's how it had to be. And I won't even harp on that one because that one's so profound that it's simple. In the in a large enough context, everything makes sense. The last thing I will say about this is with the near death experience, your whole life makes sense. And that's the largest context I think you can have. And if any of you are curious and you've never had a near death experience, I wouldn't like wish it for you, clearly. But what I will tell you is that you can watch a lot of people talk about theirs on YouTube, and you can cross compare, and you'll realize that many of them got life reviews. Many of them understood why they chose the pain in their body, even in their injuries, as they were crossing over. Many of them felt peace about it and were talking to their angels that were there to help guide them through that experience. Many of them saw why they chose the partners that they had, why they chose the divorces that were bad, why they chose the careers that they did. People get such clarity because I think death is the largest context you can have. And even in my situation, I was afforded such a great, profound ability to forgive, which would have impeded my ability to work and be a practitioner and teach you. I was afforded insight into the things that, why there are things that people do, and why the people that had done terrible things to me were allowed to do it, and why I needed to forgive them because they were part of God. Not like I had to, it wasn't mandatory, and no one said that I needed to, but they just washed such amounts of love over me that I was like, oh, in the large context, this makes sense. I got it. So apply that as you will. I do not wish near death on anybody, my God, but you can watch it vicariously, and you can take in some of those lessons and maybe skip the hard part of actually going through it. It sucks. I wouldn't recommend it, but I don't regret it either. It was an incredible experience, and for the trajectory of my career and my life, and for the spiritual practices that I have, even that makes sense. I needed to have that happen in order to be a better teacher. For me, again, not highly recommended for everybody. The next one is the law of fear. Oh, God. This one, sweet empath, heal the world, make it a better place. If we could all get this, this would change our landscape emotionally. The law of fear is simple. It's two words. Fear separates. The law of fear is simple. It is two words. Fear separates. That's it. I have been in situations where the color of my skin and my body and my boldness and my brazenness and my ability to speak has made people fearful, and they needed to get rid of me. And it separated. And I've talked a lot on here about that experience that I had a couple years ago where I had a best friend of 20 years who befriended someone and she desired something, so she became like them. And the person she desired just happened to be racist. And so she, in turn, delved deeper into something that may have already been a sleeper cell within her, but we were separated. And you think, well, it takes two to tango. Why didn't you fight for the relationship? Why didn't you? Well, she didn't, because she allowed someone to be in her ear and to whisper fear, and it separated her. We see this also happen regarding Jesus and Judas, right? Jesus had nothing but love for Judas, and in fact Judas was given a lot of access to Jesus. He was one of Jesus's closest disciples, the closest. He actually was put in charge of the money and various things, which is like, how much closer can someone be to you if you put them in charge of your finances? We just talked about this. What are finances? Energy. So Jesus allowed Judas the closest access to his energy, and even gave him his gifts, meaning he gave him the gifts of being able to raise people from the dead and various things if you read the word. Judas was, and all the disciples had it too, but Judas did. But Judas was a real non-believer. He was a deceiver, and he was very 3D and low vibrational. And what he did was he allowed his friends, if you study deep into it, because I have, this is a story that fascinated me, as it did for many of us. But he allowed his friends to whisper in his ear what he's doing. He's not making enough money. Da 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 da. It was a lot of just like real politicking, low vibrational stuff that Judas was letting people in his ear. And then the Pharisees that were like, "Hey, we've got this silver for you. I mean, Jesus isn't really paying you for real, homie. Let us just put these shekels in your pocket and just tell us where he's going to be. Nothing's really going to happen. There will be no blood on your hands." But that, in fact, was the whole point of it. Blood was forever on his hands, and Judas ended up killing himself. He separated himself from himself because he started to fear the man that was there to not just be his best friend, but to be his Lord and Savior in so many ways, if you understand the word and the story. Fear separates. That's all fear is meant to do. Racism today in this country is about fear separating. I am better than you is about fear separating. Do you get it? So if we cannot see that someone has humanity just like us, we will stay separate from them, and we are taught not to indulge, not to touch, not to integrate. That's why the best cure for racism is really full immersion into someone else's culture or ethnicity, because then you will see that they are just like you in so many ways that you could never imagine it could be. But if someone has not had that fully, then fear separates. Now, I had a lot of people ask me questions about this regarding, I had a lot of letters about this and I didn't address it, but I'll say it here. They said, how could someone who was friends with you for 20 years allow someone to get in her ear and to separate you? Well, there were other lower vibrational things at work too, very much like Judas, where there was maybe jealousies and other things, little sleeper cells, and the devil knew it. And I say the devil, so that's a lower vibrational energy intercepted and got in, but then they fed on whatever her fears were, and it separated. And also, maybe we just weren't meant to be friends. Clearly, she was my Judas, and she was there to teach me a lesson. I don't have any resentment about it, just as I imagine Jesus didn't. Meaning, like, I'm not Jesus. I was mad. I was angry. I think Jesus handled it much better than me. I was very angry for a long time, and now I'm like, it's exactly how it should be. What was the law that we just talked about here a second ago? In a large enough context, everything makes sense. I totally understand why all of that happened, but I do understand the origin and the seeds of fear. It reminds me of the movie Apocalypto, made by Mel Gibson years ago, and it was about the spirit of fear getting into a community. The community was a village, and a tribal village, and how it created everybody to turn on each other. Fear separates. When you're seeing people that are lost at sea or lost on the plane, and one person begins the descent, fear separates, and then everything can go haywire and go right to hell, other than being unified, which is the way that we get out of alive and well of most of those situations. Fear separates. It causes us to no longer be great and ascend to our higher selves. So take a look at how that's happened in your life, even in your marriages. If you guys started to have fear of each other or not trust each other, there will be a separation that is near. In your friendships, if there is no longer trust, that is inciting some fear. You're fearful of the other person, you don't trust them. It will inevitably lead to a separation. And so when people want to sow dissent among nations, hashtag Hitler, hashtag some of the presidents we've had, they will lean into fear. I remember one of our presidents talking about certain ethnicities being rapists and coming over here and taking our jobs and everything. And he whipped up such a mob that it manifested physically on January 6th. A couple of years ago, you guys saw that fear separates. It was us against them when we're all a nation of one. Even though we have different ethnicities and we're a melting pot, there was a fear that was used to galvanize and whip us up and separate us. Fear separates. So when you understand that principle, you may be able to see when people are trying to incite that strategy. And it is, in fact, a strategy. And it works every time because we all have our own primal concerns and fears. So if someone can play on that, they can get you to be separate from a person that you might really love, or an ideal that you might hold dear, or a family member that you may adore. Fear separates. That's something that's very important for you to understand, super empath, light worker, and earth angel, because it will be used against you if you're not careful. And in our lives, you may have noticed in ways that it has been used against you. The next law is the law of forgiveness. What you do not forgive holds you in bondage. And I refer back to the law of expanded context. In a large enough context, everything makes sense. What you do not forgive holds you in bondage. The reason I hopscotch back up to that, because I kind of think that is going to be my connect the dot for everything. Until I had my near death experience, I was still holding on to etheric cords of that past person. It wasn't until I really had that moment where my angels maybe allowed me to even have that moment, because they said there's no other way that you're going to release this. Really release it. Meaning it doesn't mean you won't teach about it. I could write a whole TED talk on the effery that I dealt with, but that's why I got it. It was a lesson, and I'm a teacher. It is what it is. However, I was holding on to like hatred for her. Like I despised her, and that was holding me hostage. It was making it so that my channel wasn't growing. It was making it so that I wasn't expanding in other ways personally that you guys would never know about. I was constricted. I wasn't able to really enjoy my friendship that God blessed me with in lieu of crazy. He was like, hey, let me give you like a magical earth angel alien that's just like you, someone who loves just like you. And I wasn't fully embracing the beauty and the goodness of it, because I was holding on to like, I hate her, 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 because she's treated me worse than anybody had in this life. And they said, well, think about how sick she had to be to treat you that way. Think about how low vibrational she had to be. Think about what kind of pain she was in. You see the flip there? So until I released all of the I hate her, I hate her, I hate her, which was like a strong chorus of I hate her, I despise her, she's the worst, da 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 da, I can still objectively say that in fact she did do those things, and she was terrible, and she did plot on me, and she was a mean girl, and she was deceitful. All of those things still are true, but I no longer am attached to it like, oh, F you. You guys know what I'm saying. Empath, you know I tell the truth on here. I'm very vulnerable. I'm very candid. That kind of hatred will keep you in bondage, and it did. It did, until I had that experience where my angels were like, hey, do you know she's literally just like you? Do you know that she was a karmic soulmate brought in to teach you about who you could be in your darkest ways? Do you know that she's a mirror? It doesn't mean that I'm a bad person, because I did not operate out of those things, right? She did make choices, free will choices, to lie and to be duplicitous and do things over and over again that I would not have chosen to do. But what they said is that this is also in you for the least of us, okay? But in a larger context, it all makes sense. So when they talk about this is so powerful. The law of forgiveness. What you do not forgive holds you in bondage. This is why everybody talks about forgiving them frees you. Truly it did. When I really like cried it out, thugged it out. I even have a video where I talked about my near death experience here, and you don't even understand what I'm saying, because I am in such sobbing, racking, connected to humanity. We are all one tears that I couldn't even breathe. And it was such a powerful watershed moment for me. I thought I had forgiven her. I thought I had moved on. I thought I was feeling better. I thought everything in my life is going better. I feel really good. Even though I was going through all this medical stuff and surgeries, I was feeling like I was getting a new lease on life. I was getting all these magical things happening to me. I had insurance. Everything just lined up perfectly, even in the worst of times. But they said, oh, but daughter, there's still something that you're holding on to. It's the forgiveness of what she did to you. And they said, it's not just her. What about that person that SA'd you? It's YouTube, so you can't say that, but you guys know what I'm saying. What about that person that violated you? What about that person when you were two? What about that other person? You guys get it? We all have those people in our lives, especially as empaths. People have preyed on us and not treated us right. What about that person that was actually super racist to you? What about that person that told you that they'd have you swinging from the first tree by morning and have your entrails spread throughout the mountains from their buck knife because their dad, who was the head of the clan, didn't look on you too kindly and didn't want them to treat you right? Y'all, I've had some experiences and I was carrying a lot of that bitterness in my heart. And until I had that near death experience, I didn't realize how it was holding me back from being a better teacher, from being a better monette, from being a better person, from being able to better vet new people that were worthy of being in my life. Those experiences sucked, and some of them I could make funny, and some of them aren't funny at all. And some of them broke me. And some people intentionally wanted to break me, and some of them did make me fall. But when I released the bitterness of it, I began to actually be free. I began to actually see that they're human just like me. And no, I don't have to go sing kumbaya and pat a cake, but I definitely needed to forgive them for my own sake. And that's real talk. That's a powerful one, guys, especially for us empaths, because that's a tricky way that the devil, low vibrational energy, entities, whatever you want to call it, you name it, you put your name on it. But I call it the devil. Get thee behind me, Satan. That's the way the devil likes to trick us, to keep us in lower vibrational anger, fear, and drama with people and hating them for the rest of our life and holding a grudge for the rest of our life. What does that do? That person went on and lived their life, slept with everybody they wanted to, did backflips, laughed. They had a great, good old time, and they did it all on my name, and they were living their best life. And sometimes that kind of stuff will drive you insane. And for a while, it did. And then I realized, like, oh well. You know what? Do I want her to never be happy? Do I want her to just have the worst of all misery? No, I don't, because empath, that's not who we are. That's who they were to us. So in order for us to differentiate, you have to give it up. And that I want you to give up is the bitterness. It's the grudge. It's the bondage to holding out to make sure that they pay. It's the bondage to know that the worst karma came their way. That doesn't mean that I won't do a karma reading, because sometimes we need to have that to clear our head. But we cannot hold on to that fear and that dread, because fear separates, right? We just learned that law. And what does fear separate you from? Well, you just say, well, I wanted to be separated from them. They wanted to be separated from me. They treated me atrociously. No, the fear separates you from your spirituality. The fear separates you from hearing clearly. The fear separates you from your ascension. It's not about them. They were there as a catalyst and a test. They were there to set you on your path so that you would be your best. It's one of the best things that ever happened to me. It's not that we're going to sit down over tea and I'm going to like clink glasses with her and thank her, but it's probably she's the best teacher I've had, because she taught me how to really listen to myself. But if I were to held on to the anger that I had of her gaslighting me and trying to diminish my intuition and insult my intelligence, y'all, I could not teach you. I was not going to have any success. And that's the same for you. Divest from the anger. And because unless you forgive them, you will never really be free. It truly holds you in bondage. The next law is the law of free will. Individuals will and must express within the bounds of the divine will. This is one of the things that we're taught, especially in Christianity, that God and his angels will never force anything upon thee. Meaning, you are not going to be made to love somebody. You are not going to be made to hate somebody. You are not going to be made to accept Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, if that's your jam. You are not going to be able to be made to be a Tao Buddhist and do mantras and chants. You are not going to be made to do anything. We are tested. We are, sometimes we go on the hero's journey for many of us. For those of you who have read Paulo Coelho's Alchemist, we are the creators of our destinies in many ways, and there will be many paths that you can take. There are many right answers and there are many wrong ones, but we all have free will. The precipice of all of these, the baseline of it all, is our free will. You get to choose what you want to do. So I could have had a choice, making reference to the last point, to continue to hold a grudge and hate her forever and hope that all the worst things happen to her. And the truth is, even in my deepest anger, I never wished that for her, because I know how karma works. I know that what she did to me would naturally come back to her in ways that would take her breath away and alarm her and surprise her years from now. I knew, because but that's what happens when you're a good practitioner, right? We all have a kind of baseline of karma and dharma. So there wasn't a wishing anything on anybody. But what I realized here with that is that she used her free will, and she did what she needed to do, and I did what I needed to do. And free will is what we all have. You could think that someone let you down bad, or they failed you, or they rallied against you, and maybe they did, but that was their free will, and we're allowed to have it. She got to make those decisions, and I got to make the decisions that I made, not to retaliate in the way that I could have. There was a way that I could have retaliated. Y'all, we all have a low vibrational self. But my angel said, no, we'll let you teach about it, but they gave me an assignment, y'all. And that's what I'm saying. That was also free will. They said, here's what we will allow, and this will be sanctioned and it will be safe, or you could go in a really dark, low vibrational way. The choice was before me. You will have choices before you. I chose not to go that way because I realized that I needed to elevate, and that it was fantastic. We till soil, right? And what is the soil? It's manure. Shit. She left me so much shit. Such rich soil to till through, that I will have stories, allegories, and funny ways to help you. And what I tell you guys, by exercising my free will in that situation, I was able to bring to you help. And I thought it was just indulgent at a time, right? And my angel said, no, you were actually listening to us. And you know how I know? Because of the letters you guys wrote me, because of the emails you guys sent me, because of the times you guys said, wow, you helped save my life, which I thought was way too much. And you guys were so beautiful and so eloquent. And you're like, no, I didn't think that this was just me, or I thought it was just me, and I thought it was crazy. And then you told a certain part of your story, and it totally validated what I had been through. For the way you guys sent me letters to held my heart and hold my heart, and you were sweet to me. You used your free will to reach out to me and say, I love you, I care about you, I hate that this happened to you, but it also happened to me too. I also dealt with someone who was like this too. So that's how I knew that I had made the right free will choice. Sometimes we don't. Y'all, there have been times in my life where I have not. So that's why I'm saying in this one, it was such a gauntlet test for me, such a huge lesson for me, because they said you could get her back like this, and this, or you could go about your destiny. Go into your free will. We all have it, and you cannot affect someone else's. Message regarding love potions and spells and work that people do, that is affecting someone's free will, and it never works out the way you think. I've talked to you about this before, being taught by a voodoo practitioner, even though that is not my practice. She hired me to paint a mural in her bodega, and she taught me, she said, listen, I was there for a few weeks, and she said, never do love spells on anybody. I was dating this guy at the time, my May-December romance you've heard me talk about, and I just thought he was so magical, I wanted to keep him forever. And she said, she sold the candles and all the stuff there to do the work, and she said to me, you are pure. She said, you have a path, and it's not this. And she says, you are an earth angel. This is one of the many people that have confirmed what I am and what I would do. And she said, don't buy, even though she was selling the candles, and I watched people come into her store and buy the candles, she said, this is not for you. She said, let me explain to you what happens. When you try to bind someone to you that's not actually supposed to be there, and you go against their free will, they will become like a caged animal in the spiritual world, and it will manifest physically. She's like, this is when you see men and women that get into very abusive relationships, where someone's dogging them out, abusing them, and they're getting into very depraved sexual acts. And I'm never going to yuck anybody's or kink shame, but she was like, a lot of this has to do with people that did work, that tried to bind someone to them. She's like, this is where the sharing of STDs, and listen, I'm not hating on anybody's STDs. Everybody's dealt with something or other in their lifetime, right? I don't think that STDs are a result of bad karma for anybody. I think it is what it is, as the law that we just went over says here. But what I'm saying is, she was like, that's when you see like crazy things happen like that sometimes, because what happens is the more violent bestiality part of people comes out when you try to bind someone against their free will. And she says, even though I sell the candles, she was like, God also speaks to me, and he said, this is never something for you. So it's never something that I did do, but it was such a powerful lesson to have this voodoo practitioner teach me that people that actually try to go against people's free will have negative consequences, because we cannot go against someone's free will. If God doesn't make us submit to him, and the universe doesn't say you have to do what we say, and our angels don't make us do what they advise us to do, why do we think as humans that we could do that? Well, lower vibrational codependent people will. And that's when they're putting blood in food and all of the gross stuff that we've all heard about, and they're doing all these candles and all these love spells. Listen, intention and energy is real. So even if it's not about the candle that you bought, or whatever else. It's about the fact that you are intending that someone is yours when they may not want to be. Be very careful about that love energy. You cannot go against someone's free will. It will always backfire. One of the best lessons I ever got from a practitioner in my life was that lesson. Do not do this. And you know what's so funny? I never did that regarding that guy. That guy wanted to do that with me. Message, a little back away history here. He even though he was a Caucasian guy, and he was Scottish, and he was a polyglot and well traveled all over the world. He was a sea captain. And he had been in Africa a lot and was very familiar with that and traveled all over the Brazil and South American countries. And he was very comfortable with all of that kind of work and energy. And he was very infatuated with me and wanted me to bind myself to him. Was like, I give you permission to make the sweat rice, which is one of the things that it's called. I give you permission to do these things with me. He was very involved and invested in being attached to my energy. And I realized later when we broke up, because it was inevitable, it is what it is, it was always going to be what it was going to be, that is why that practitioner advised me not to do that energy. She said, there will come a time in this relationship where you won't want it. I couldn't imagine it when she said it to me. I couldn't imagine that I wouldn't want him. I couldn't imagine that I wasn't going to be in love with him. I couldn't imagine it. She said, you're going to want your own situation. You're going to want someone else to be your husband. She was predicting things over me that I couldn't see at the time because I was just in the thick of that love. Who can relate, y'all? Especially to being in the thick of a love and being infatuated with someone. And he was so amazing and dashing and debonair, and the languages and all the things that tickled all of my little sensibilities in every part in my chart. But she wasn't wrong. And I'm so glad that I never bought that candle. I never did that work. And then I never did the work that he wanted me to do, because it would have binded me to him in a way that would have been uncomfortable for both of us upon the departure. And as it was uncomfortable because he was infatuated and I was infatuated, and we both had this connection to each other. And any breakup is tough. But can you imagine if I would have done that and gone against his free will, against him knowing, even though he had given me permission? Even when I talked to her about that, I said, well, he wants me to. She said, don't do it. Allow this to be what it is or isn't, and let it elapse when it's time. So be careful, for those of you. This must be a message out there for somebody. If you feel called to bind someone to you and do work like that to you, it will backfire. And she said this to me specifically in murderous ways. Meaning, she said, I've seen people get, unalived because they chose to bind a partner to them and it wasn't right. And then they passed away, or the partner passed away, or there was physical violence and there were gunshots and there were stabbed, like craziness. And I didn't want any part of it. I've also watched that happen where someone has bound someone to someone and then they lost everything. Like they lost their kids, they lost their wife, they lost their spouse, their husband, their truck. It's like a country song backwards, right? What do you get when you play a country song backwards? Well, that's what you get when you go against someone's free will with all those love spells. If you're interested in someone and you would like to have their energy, meaning like you want to know that they care about you, you can script like, for our highest good, this relationship takes the best course. That's about it, y'all. Don't do any more than that, because you will pay for it in the worst ways. Message, don't say I didn't warn you. All right. The next law, the law of giving. To give, you must receive, and to receive, you must give. I love this law. There must be a norm of reciprocity. That's one of the things that I teach all the time. And I am going to, after the law of goodwill, I'm going to stop. There must be a law of reciprocity regarding the law of giving. And so that's something that empaths, super empaths especially, we need to know. We are often overgivers. We are often kind of martyrs. We often are people pleasers. And so we're not used to what it is to receive. And that was one of the lessons that was taught to me. Again, back to that, one of my favorites of these, which is, in the grand scheme of things, it all makes sense, right? In the greater context. The dissolution of that past connection that I've talked about had to happen so that I could actually be with a giver. And it was such a disturbing thing for me when I got with a giver that I said to her, do our parts fit? Because I wasn't used to someone that gave the same way that me, that loved the same way as me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do if I wasn't rescuing someone and saving them and whatever. And that doesn't mean that we both don't bounce ideas off each other or need help or guidance at various times in our life. But it does mean that we're both pretty self-sufficient and we do our own work and we show up pretty balanced most days. And I wasn't used to that. I was used to basket cases. I was used to people with mental illnesses that refused to treat it. I was used to people that would like to run into brick walls repeatedly and that never listened to me and just wanted to siphon my energy and deplete my resources. And Y'all, can you relate? So when I got into a relationship with someone who was reciprocal, I was like, I don't know how to act. I don't know what to do. And she gave to me and I gave to her too. We kind of joke about it that we have Venmo wars because there's never really an issue with money. If she says she's going to pay me for something, she pays me. If she says that I'm worthy of something, I'm worthy of it. If she wants to bless me one day and send a treat, a trinket, or a gift my way, she does it. And man, she does it in such great abundance. I've never had anybody treat me this way. It's beautiful, but it was meant to happen because it's something that I have given. And that's another thing. What you give out to the universe, you will receive back. So for how many years, empaths, have you given and given and given to people and there wasn't reciprocity and you thought this can't be right? And I thought that too, but guess what? I got it. I got it in a new boo. I got it in somebody who actually values me and was able to give to me. And in this lifetime, I was meant to experience that because God says, Monette, we saw what you did. We saw how much you've helped people. We saw how much you tried. We saw how much people denied it and lied in your face and didn't like give you back what you deserved. I just heard a bell. That's so interesting. We saw is what I just heard you say. Anyway, so what I realized is that that had to be something. Oh, the Polar Express, the bell, Santa, hearing and believing. Okay, I get it. So what they were saying there with the bell, just a little metaphysical kind of paranormal moment that happened there, is that what I'm hearing with that is that we don't believe that we're going to have that kind of love exchange or that kind of kindness exchange to us. And a lot of us empaths don't believe that we're worthy of it, but we are. They want you to still believe that you're worthy of that. The norm of reciprocity is a huge, big thing. It happens in our job. It happens with our work. It happens with our relationships, our kiddos, everybody, right? So with work, the norm of reciprocity is this: you go in and you give a service and you expect to get paid for it, right? Well, in friendships, the payment is time and investment in someone that actually is there for you and loyal to you. And I realized that what I needed back was a lot more than what the people that were in my life could do. And so I just stopped dealing with them, not because they weren't doing it for me, but because I was like, oh, I'd rather just be by myself if I'm going to be this depleted, and that they would never have reciprocity with me. There comes a time in your life where you may have to assess if someone is going to be reciprocal or not, and then are they worth the continual investment? And I realized that these people were not, because they just only wanted the best of me. They wanted to kind of deplete me, and they weren't willing to kind of replenish me. God put someone in my life and allowed someone to be swept out so completely that I would never want to go back because of the way that they behaved. And he said, hey, we're going to give you someone who's much like you, who is reciprocal in all things that she does do, and you don't have to ask. And she's anticipating your needs the same way that you did. A lot of you guys are being promised that. I'm speaking that over you as a prophecy. You're going to come into a season of being with someone who gives as much as thee, who gives as much as you, who does as much as you have. And it's weird. I'm not going to lie to you and say that at first I bristled because I didn't understand it, because I was so used to being the giver and the saver and the fixer. And this was someone who came in to give, to save, and to fix me. And I needed it. I needed love. I needed kindness. I needed someone who was genuine. I needed someone who was protective. There were a lot of things that I needed. And as empaths, we're not allowed to say that. That's a dirty word. I need. People have called us needy and weaponized that. But I did need things. We all need things. Even the people that we were giving to needed things. They just were more crafty and manipulative about extracting it from us. And out of our lack of esteem and people-pleasing past ways, we gave without them even having to ask, because they were manipulative and we were not loving ourselves and valuing. So that's what I need you to understand. A lot of you here need things from people, and you're allowed to need them. I remember being in a therapy session when I was a teenager and having the therapist say, my, Monette, aren't we needy today? And I remember how terrible I felt about that, because I thought, I'm supposed to be in a safe space and this guy is calling me needy. And it's because my needs weren't being met. And we are needy. Think about a baby coming out bloodied and full of anger and rage, just screaming. What are they screaming for? Their needs met, and they don't know how to communicate yet. And I thought about the mishandling of that therapist all those years later when I had a boss who said something similar to me, and then it was echoed in a partner. And I thought, am I just that terribly needy? No, I was a normal person that was used to dealing with narcissistic injuries and parents and other abusive people that had taken advantage of me, much like people have taken advantage of you. And they taught me that my needs were not to be met and that it was too much, but they were extracting exactly what they needed from me. You get it, guys? Don't let anybody mess with your head that way. You are allowed to give and receive, but give and receive it must be a norm of reciprocity, not just one person extracting from you, while you give to thee. It was so beautiful to have someone come in and again, releasing the outcome, as I've talked about here in some of these previous wisdom lessons. If that person is not in my life forever, then she's still been a blessing because she taught me something pivotal, which is to receive, to which is what it's like to have someone have boundaries but still give of their soul to you and love you and still want to be good to you. That's another thing. Boundaries and giving and receiving. That's an interesting thing that we are not familiar with because we can be quite fatalistic empaths. It's all or nothing because that's our people pleasing past. Yeah? That's our past. I speak it over us. If you're here as a super empath, that is your past. We're not in the people pleasing mode. I don't care how much I love the person or how much I want to impress them or how much I want them to think well of me. If a yes is a yes, then a no is a no. I was recently faced with that situation where I wanted to make sure that I said a yes to someone just because I loved the person adjacent to them. And my body said no. And I had to say no, and I couldn't do it. And I didn't feel guilt about it, but I did struggle because that old empath way was in me, right? I wanted to make sure that I people pleased. And my body said, no, I can't people please. And my soul said, nope. And I apologized, not profusely, but I apologized. I said, I just can't do it, sweetie. And you know what happened? Nothing. The person said, oh, it's no problem. I made another appointment. It's all good. It's taken care of. It was a beautiful lesson about reciprocity. She gave to me respect because I gave myself respect. Does that make sense? She didn't give me pushback. And I think a lot of us are used to people that push back. And that's why we would overgive and we weren't in equal reciprocity. So that's the message here for you. I got a little off there, but I think maybe some of you guys needed to hear that regarding the fact that you are allowed to be needy. Empath, it is not a dirty word that you have needs. Everyone does. They were just more manipulative about how they extracted it, and that you should be in balanced and equal relationships with people who are also giving to you and not just taking from you. If someone's just taking from you, sweet peas, that's not the look, and your universal angels will come in and step in and they will change it. And it will not happen, especially if you're listening to this video, you're a super empath, okay? Which means that you have surpassed other people, and I'm not saying you're better than anybody, it just means you've done more work. It usually means you've had more pain, okay? It's not necessarily a badge of honor. It means that you've been kind of dragged through the mud and the dirt by people and almost driven half insane, and you had to kind of get your balance back with the help of God, your angels, and yourself, you know? Usually you've been abandoned if you're a super empath. You've had to figure stuff out yourself, but you're allowed to have needs, and you're allowed to have people that feed back into you, and reciprocity is a wisdom principle. It is a law. It is a rule. It will not be something that you can avoid. You have to have someone that feeds back into you. And if you're just around takers, what will happen is the universe will create a void, meaning it will sweep away the takers and the proclatians so that you can be around someone who's actually going to feed you. Because in order for us to live the full experience on this earth, we must have the duality and experience the fullness of a thing. And the fullness of a thing is someone who sees your worth and feeds back into you too. Reciprocity. It's my favorite. The last one that I will talk about today is the Law of Goodwill. You increase the reservoir of goodwill in the world by leaving every situation better than you find it. This is the Girl Scout way, right? So when we were taught as Girl Scouts and we camped, you pick up the trash around the camps, around you, even if it wasn't trash that you created or that you did do, because the motto was to leave a thing, a campsite specifically, better than you found it. Now in dating, there is called the rule of camp, which is about a May-December romance, or someone dating an older person dating a younger person, or a richer person dating a person that might be in college, or whatever the case may be. The rule of camp applies the same. Leave it better than you found it, right? So in those dynamics, the role of the person who is more privileged, older, wiser, etc., is to leave the younger person not depleted, destitute, and strung out, but maybe better off, okay? That's materialism and other stuff. That's sugar baby stuff. That's all of that. But maybe some of you guys are familiar with that. Even if it's not about finances, to leave the other person better than you found them. I will say in my May-December romance, I can say that my person, my soulmate, my Jan, he left me better than he found me. He elevated me. He spoke life into me. And even though we did eventually break up, the thing was that I was a better person for had having his love, okay? I was a better person. He loved beauty into me. He loved life into me. He spoke my life over me, meaning some of the work that I do right now, he had visions about what it would be, even though he didn't have the full vision. But he was like, I see you here, and I see you traveling over the world, and I see you speaking to people, and I know how powerful your work will be. And it was before I could even see it. In that way, he obeyed the rule of camp. He left me better than he found me. Now, the goodwill energy here is that we leave the world empaths better than we found it, or we leave a situation better than we find it. Even in my departing of the toxic situation, my Judas vibration, energy, and alignment, I still was tasked to leave her better than I found her with information. It means that I didn't get to do the brutal cuss out that I would, my delicious low vibrational soul would have loved to do. Instead, I educated her on my way out about my observations and about some of the dynamics that were true within our relationship, and the fact that I didn't believe any of her words because there wasn't truth in them. So I did get to say honesty, but I didn't just like brutalize her like I felt she had done me. I didn't just eject and reject her completely. I didn't abandon her. I held on far too long waiting to try to figure something out. And I'm not saying you need to be as self-sacrificial as that. I don't recommend that, and I don't think that that was healthy for me to hold on as long as I did. I should have disembarked years prior to. But what I will say is that I did not leave feeling any bit of guilt because I left edifying her even as I left, lifting her up, trying to re-encourage her. I just no longer had anything left for her because she had not obeyed the law of reciprocity, the law of giving and receiving that we just previously spoke about. You get it? So my coffers were empty. I was depleted. She was not investing into me. She was investing into a lot of other people and not me. So I had nothing to give her other than some sound advice and then a toodaloo. I was out of there. And that was all right for me. But I left it better than I found it. I definitely left her better than I found her, and not worse for wear. My whole point of being in her life was elevating her with care. And if she ever reflects on that someday, she'll understand that I did the best I could. In all situations, super empath, earth angels, light workers, you are called to do good, even for those who try to destroy you. I know it's a tough lesson, right? But that's the reason that we are shown this regarding the biblical allegories and Jesus. You are left to do a thing. If you are the body, if you are the light, you have to leave it better than you found it. It's the Girl Scout way all day, okay? So that is what we're here to do. Even if someone has hurt you, it doesn't mean that you like do your abuser's hair or anything like that. Maybe some of you guys have, maybe that's a trigger for someone to hear, but what they're saying is you leave a situation better than you found it. Even in your anger, even in your pain, even in your shame, find a way to educate. That's my motto. That's the name of the game for me. Now, not everybody's a teacher. Not everybody's going to sit down and write a dissertation or make a video or write a poem. That's not everybody. That's how I transmuted the energy. And that's a message here too. The way that you transmute a lot of this toxic energy is to leave it better than you found it in some way. Maybe create art or something out of it. Yeah, I'm starting to wind down. They said this is the last one for sure. So that's what you guys need to know is that leave it. It doesn't have to be perfect. And it doesn't have to be pure, but it needs to be better than when you found it. Even in my relationship with that soulmate that was the May December romance, I feel like I left him better than I found him. I helped him to elevate and open up his stances politically. I helped him to see things differently metaphysically, and he told me as much. I know that whenever I have to disembark from any relationship, I don't ever feel guilty when it's over because I usually have given the best that I can to it. Even some of the things you've heard me talk about recently regarding a friendship here at the top of the year where I had to hold someone accountable and they lied to me and they gaslit me and they just didn't want to take accountability for the shenanigans that they did. And I told her, I said, I feel zero guilt about not being in a connection with you because I'm a good time, because I came with kindness and fantastic gifts, and everyone in your family can attest to it, that all I brought was goodness. And that was my intention, was to bring goodness and light. Doesn't mean that I was perfect and got everything right, but in that connection, it was pretty good. I hit it pretty out of the park. So I was like, so this is your loss. And I didn't say it in the way that was like, nanny, nanny, boo, boo. But I was like, honestly, I had no problem saying words anymore. Empath, super empath. As you start to take care of yourself and you align your mind, body, and soul, sticking up for yourself is effortless. It's something that just rolls off of my chest. Now, it doesn't bother me at all. I don't care about how they feel because I probably spent many years caring about how they feel when they did not care about how I feel. So when it's time to disembark, then I'm just keeping it real. And I was like, sweetie, I'm okay. I've built a life where I am fully self sufficient here and where I've left you with some important tools that you need and some important truths that you need to take a look at. And I'm okay. I'm going to be fine. And that is how I disembark now. I don't look back. I don't waste my time. I don't think, oh no, could I have done something better? Because usually, empath, when we show up, and super empaths, when we show up, we've done the best. We've done the best, better than the rest, better than they will ever probably get again in their life. They will look for us in many people. So don't regret when you have to disembark. You're doing that to protect your heart, but you're doing it because they probably weren't treating you as an equal. But that doesn't mean that you don't follow the rule of camp. Leave them better than you found them. And usually, if you existed, you did exactly that. I love you guys. So I am going to check out some of the messages because I saw that some were here coming in and read some of them. And then, get go. Oh my God, an hour and a half. I didn't realize I was here so long. Nolan says, hi, hope you are feeling great. Have a nice day. Thank you, Nolan. I am feeling pretty good today. Kesala says, good morning. Monette and everyone, good morning, Kesala. Nolan says, I myself am just trying to let go of expected outcomes, trying to relax more and trust in God. Nolan, you will, Nolan 89, no, 89 Lynn is his name. You will do that. And so that's a huge one, Nolan. Letting go of the expected outcomes. That one's a tough one for us. But I think once you crack that one, the rest of them just kind of come in very easily for you. That expected outcome one is the hardest one for every human. We all have an expected outcome. We all have an expectation that a thing is going to go left or right or be a certain way. And it may not ever be the way we think. And once you release that, you just feel so much better. Ali H says, I do deserve a friend like me, only prickly with my Aries gay bestie, but he's getting better and I'm very patient with him. Our gay besties can be prickly. Yes, they can. He's the only one who calls me out, though, too. I need that sometimes, but we need each other, she says. We need each other, and it totally makes sense. It totally makes sense, she says. It comes from loving myself. Yes. Maturity and respect yourself. Wounded healers indeed. Yes, Allie, we are wounded healers indeed. And I love that you have a prickly bestie. I still want you to set boundaries with that prickly bestie. I like that he calls you out. We all need a friend like that who can be like, girl, you know, this is wild, right? But we also want to make sure that he's respecting and loving you in the best way that he can. I imagine, Allie, that you were going to leave him better than you found him. And I don't imagine that you're leaving him anytime. But what I'm saying is that even your interaction with him is teaching him a better way to be. So guys, this is so nice to spend the morning with you. I've got other work to do and get back to my disciplines as we just talked about in these wisdom rules. I am going to disembark here and start working with clients shortly, but I'm so grateful for those of you who showed up and had a little bit of early morning chat and coffee and thoughts with me and shared some energy. I see you. I love you. I respect you. And I want you to come back and join me next time, and we will continue to evolve together.